Today's video is actually so exciting because although I'm not going to do it, it could have such a clickbaity title. Resident reads a book about residents. Trin recently did like the cheerleader watches Bring It On and like tells you how it really is. So this is going to be my version of that. Most of you probably have no plans of reading this book, so I'll give you a quick synopsis. Essentially, it's this 16-year-old girl. She's kind of a girl genius. She happens to be brown. Her mom is a pediatric oncologist, and also her best friend when she was younger died from leukemia. So she has a lot of ties to the pediatric oncology world and a lot of like motive to want to become a pediatric oncologist. The rest of the story essentially is her first year in residency and the difficulties that she faces because of her age. Like people just thinking she's not mature enough or grown enough to be able to do things. People not really taking her seriously because she's so young. So TLDR, I did not like this book. For me specifically, a lot of it was around the medicine and how cringy it was. But before I even get into that, I didn't like the characters. It really only truly focuses on the main character. And all the other residents are just like these underdeveloped things that she interacts with. Like this could have been a YA version of Grey's Anatomy, and it didn't deliver on that front. Also, the love interest and the whole love story itself is pretty rushed and there's no build up to it. So outside of it being a huge ethical dilemma, it just falls flat for me. But first and foremost, I think a lot of the stuff I didn't like about it had to do with its representation of medicine, as well as just how absolutely dumb the main character was. Like just unbearable. The main character will take medical terms and try to just incorporate it into her like casual speak to make her sound like she knows what she's doing, and nobody does this. There's a medical legal term almost for everything that we say in like casual terms as well. So like if you're farting, it's flatulence. If you're vomiting, it's emesis, like things like that. There's always like this other term for it that you can use when you're doing like a legal document. And she would just like casually throw those in, and usually she would use them to describe how she was feeling romantically, which I just thought was so weird. I guess the title of the book should have told me that that's what she was doing. Maybe if you're not in healthcare, it won't seem cringy to you, but reading this was like the whole time. Just to give you some cringy examples of this, on chapter 2 she says, "I hate being late, loathe it. It literally gives me hives. They're psychosomatic, obviously." Another one, "He catches me staring and grins. I look away quickly, blushing, the brief erythema warming my cheeks." And I don't have a picture of it, but there's another one where she's like, she sees the boy she likes and it's like, "I could feel my heart racing, sinus tachycardia." Which, anyways, they're just so cringy and so bad. And also, she really liked the word erythema. Like once she got on that one, I think she used that example like a good 5 or 6 times. So I don't know. At the very least, if you're gonna do it, switch it up a little. It was so cringy. She had such a complex about people not taking her seriously because of her age, which like fair, but also it was to the point where like she had zero humility. Like she did not even know her place in the hierarchy at all. Like as a first year resident, you still don't know shit. I mean, you know like the textbook stuff and you've passed your exam fine, but like you're not super well versed clinically. You just kind of have this textbook knowledge. But anyways, this girl, I think like she took it so far. She had no respect for any of the other residents. She had no respect for her like senior attendings, and then would call them out in front of people in the family rooms and just so many different things. And I was like, girl, like we get it, you're smart, but honestly, if you're gonna act like this, no one is gonna want to work with you. And it was kind of frustrating that she couldn't see that. And again, that was kind of one of the instances where she's proving the point that she lacks any sense of maturity. And on top of all that, because of her age, she was exempt from call, and so she doesn't have to do any call shifts whatsoever. And like that's one of the hardest parts of residency, is just how tired you are all the time from having to do these constant overnight shifts or doing these like 24, 26 hour shifts or whatever, and then like working all week and then working on a weekend as well, things like that. And this girl was exempt from all that, and at no point did she even seem to feel bad about it or recognize that maybe she should pick up the slack and work a little bit harder during the day. Like she just had no sense for trying to help her other co-residents. And I was like, you're literally isolating yourself. You're literally being a piece of shit. And it was just so hard for me as someone who's done it to not side with the other residents when you're acting the way you are. And then for you to like walk around expecting people to just give you this respect, like you did nothing to earn or deserve any of this. Like, I don't care that you're 16 and have your MD. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you still have to be willing to work. You still have to kind of know your place, but like, so it was just frustrating from that point of view. A lot of times I did not side with her. I sided with the other residents, and I could see why they were also frustrated with her. So that just made reading it even more difficult. And for me, honestly, like, this girl embodies everything that people insinuate when they say, oh, like, you're just 16, you wouldn't get it. Like, she literally embodied all of those bad things that you associate with teenagers, which I don't necessarily always agree with. I think there are mature teenagers, but like this girl, I think her maturity level was somewhere at around like 13, 14 max. The fact that like she doesn't do call because of her age, it was so hard to empathize with her. So I was like, you can't really complain that you're doing an extra consult or that you think people are making you do more paperwork or something like that. Like, you literally should be doing all that. You're not doing call. And then the last bit, honestly, was just like the actual medicine was so bad. The one practiced by her, to be honest. So she did a lot of stupid things, and usually it was kind of below the table or behind people's backs. So that just made it worse, to be honest. Actually, to get into medical school, at least here, I don't know about the States, but there's this book that most people think you should read to get in, and it's called Doing Right. And it basically teaches you like the 4 main ethical principles that medicine revolves around. This girl, I feel like this girl missed that memo and just did not read the book, because every single decision she made, I'm positive, has been a clear-cut example that has been made in that book, that if she just read the goddamn book, like, she would have been so much better off for it. So some of the things that this girl does, I mean, the entire love line. So there's a kid with cancer who sees her, they get talking, he thinks she's a patient because of her age. She does nothing to rectify this lie, and then just kind of goes with it. And then even after like everybody finds out, and even after he finds out, she's still like down to do it. And like, there's a few times where people kind of tell her, and she realizes that ethically it's not that great. And in the end, it is not her own maturity or own like self-restraint that stops them ever from doing it. But usually it's things like his IV line being too short, or his fatigue because of his cancer. It was never like her making the decision actively to be like, maybe I shouldn't sleep with a patient. So I feel like that in and of itself is a horrible message. And if you keep reading this book, I think at the end, she does some other mistakes, which I'll go over in a second. But like, at the end of all this, she's kind of rewarded for it, and never, like, there's no consequences to what she does. And most people seem to be like, oh yeah, like, I could see why you did that. And it's like, no, like, there's no passes like that in medicine. Like, you get sued. That's it. There's no, like, we could see what your intentions were. No, like, you get sued. It's done. You lose your license. Done. This girl would have lost her license, 100%, if that shit ever came to light. Plus all the other stuff she does. But the other annoying part, too, is, like, a lot of the principles of medicine that are kind of highlighted in this book are ones that I think are these sort of falsely misleading ones for the public, because then as like the resident, you deal with the aftermath of people having these expectations that are perpetuated by stories like this. So another patient that she sees with her like other co-residents, because they all round together, is basically also another like pediatric oncology patient, and the whole team decides that, you know, there's no further like investigations or further treatments that would be beneficial to this kid. And then the main character brings up this one possible study for like a new medication that maybe could help the patient. And they kind of all discuss like the risks and benefits, and together decide that the benefits would not outweigh the amount of risk associated with it, and also that she wasn't the type of person I think that the preliminary studies were done on. Basically, the team decides she wouldn't be a candidate, and this girl decides that no, like, I think she will be, and kind of just goes and talks to the family on her own. Then I think they raise a bunch of money and put the girl into the study ultimately. And I can't even remember, but I think it's implied that like she gave this girl her last fighting chance. Like, you're undermining all of your peers, and then on top of that, like, you're kind of leading people to mistrust they're physicians when they say that there's no other options available for you. And it just leads to like people going on the internet and looking things up and saying like, why can't I be a candidate for this? Then your team of physicians is kind of like defending themselves, trying to say like, you know, we're not withholding stuff from you. You just are not a candidate for this. If you were, we would let you, etc., etc. To me, it builds mistrust between like patients and physicians, but also it gives this false idea that you have to always be doing something and you have to be fighting for your patients and like we will never give up and like we're just going to keep doing things and see what happens. And like that's not how you practice, because there's all these risks and side effects that come with the decisions that you make, and this girl obviously doesn't get that. You could cause a lot of harm by doing that. So literally, like, unless you are on the brink of death and there is no point caring about side effects or risks or potential harms that can come of it, like, people don't just throw shit at you when you're sick. Like, they try to make a strategy and they think about it and they think like I want to make sure you have good chances of recovering or seeing a benefit with this medication, because otherwise it just causes a bunch of harm. And like, again, this girl gave no shits about that. She just like went bulldozing right in with this idea of hers, and it ended up working. So great, she gets all the glory. But it's like, honestly, like, if you did something bad, again, you would have been sued, there would have been consequences. Like, you can't practice like that. And then another example is that there was a code that was happening, maybe on the same patient or maybe like on another young girl with cancer, and she's not leading the code. I don't remember. I think she gets there a bit late or like kind of walks in later. Anyways, she freezes a little bit, and it's the other residents who are running the code, and they're doing like the whole algorithm, going through the steps, whatever. And then in the middle of them, I think, performing CPR, she just like suddenly says, guys, wait, no, like, I've spoken with the patient and actually, like, this isn't her wishes. I think her and the family are DNR DNI, which means like they don't want CPR to be done. And everyone was like, what? And she's acting like she's saving the day by like telling them that, yeah, like, we don't actually need to do CPR and we're going against her wishes and like we need to stop doing what we're doing. But it's like, girl, if you knew this patient wanted to become DNR DNI, like, why did you not do any of the paperwork? Why did you not do it so that legally you could make an order so that it actually could be done? Like, in the moment of a code, if there's no legal documentation that this person doesn't want CPR, like, you are, by law, you have to provide that service. Like, you can't assume that somebody doesn't want to live if there's no legal thing that says, you know? Anyways, I was like, how could you be so dumb? Like, how could you think that that was the appropriate time to say what you needed to say? And if you were so keen and so observant and so smart, like, why didn't you do it before the code happened? You knew they were sick, and trust me, all residents know, like, goals of care discussions and stuff, and like, you knew it and didn't say anything earlier, and you didn't bother to go document it, and then just say it in the middle of the code and act like people are just gonna listen to you. No, they're not, because then they get sued. I just, this girl had no understanding, I guess, of the medical legal system at all. And I, like, maybe can give her the benefit of the doubt because I don't really know American system. But honestly, I assume America, because they're businesses and it's not like free healthcare, I honestly assume they're probably more strict than we are here. I could be wrong, but still. And I get that the point of the book is not the medicine, but it frustrated me because it's perpetuating so many ideas that are just not true, and I think gives patients and like the general public false ideas of how medicine should be practiced and just false expectations, you know? Because, like, for example, I touched upon it, but one of the things we're fighting in medicine right now is this notion that you always have to do something. There are times where just waiting to see what happens and giving yourself and your body the chance to do what it needs to do is beneficial to us just giving a medication or prescribing something. And I think there's a lot of people who say, like, we prescribe too much. But I think that also, like, managing patient expectations and the public expectations of what physicians can do and the limits of what they can do is also important, because people come in with a lot of expectations. People want answers to everything, and they want to know that you're doing every possible thing to try to help them. And sometimes I think that having a disease and having sickness is such a hard pill to swallow in and of itself that sometimes the last thing you want to hear is that we think doing, you know, quote unquote nothing is a better bet than giving you something that could have potential side effects or harms. And yeah, I just felt like this book it was just annoying because I guess I can see the other side of it sometimes too. And the last part too is I felt like a lot of the medical explanation was obviously basic because they're not trying to, it's not supposed to be textbook level. But for how low of a level it was medically, I really felt like it was drawn out to make the main character sound smart, but in actuality, she wasn't really saying anything that smart, which again, just added to how annoying she was. I think there was like one part where she had at least a page or two of just explaining the options for this patient and their cancer. And she doesn't actually explain anything. She essentially just says you have 3 options, and those are either chemotherapy, and vaguely describes chemotherapy, either radiation, vaguely describes that, or surgery and vaguely describes that, but never actually talks about any of the procedures. Like there was just no, like you could have sprinkled some detail in there for me to actually think that she knows what she's talking about. But it was literally like the most basic concepts of what chemotherapy entails. And in my mind, like cancer of all the topics in medicine is like one of my weakest points. And I was like, even for me, like anybody can tell you that when you have a cancer, there's 3 ways you can treat it, and it'll be one of those 3 or a combination of those 3. Like that to me does not tell me that you are a resident in the program and have any idea that you know what you're speaking about. If that was the case, you could have literally said that in like a paragraph and explained it to the patient. You didn't need like a 3-page, monologue about all the little details that weren't really details. They were just overarching principles of these 3 ways that you can treat cancer. So again, that just fueled my anger against this main character and all the garbage that she is perpetuating to the patients. Whew, that was way more long-winded than I expected. I hope it made sense, even if you're not in medicine. And again, even if you don't care about this book, I hope you somewhat enjoyed this video, and I will see you next time. Bye!